Hi, this is Lauren with Craft Some Joy. Welcome back to my channel and welcome back to my craft room. Today we're going to continue with my Progress on Project series, or POP, and this is episode 8. And we are going to be talking about digital. And not just any digital, but digital organization. And we are especially going to talk about how to organize your digital photographs when you are a scrapbooker. So I've been working behind the scenes on how to get a handle on my own digital photographs, and I've come up with a strategy that I think might be helpful for you. So I'm going to share that with you today in this episode. And I know there's a lot of different ways to organize digital photographs, and I certainly don't have all the answers, but at least I want to share with you what I'm working on and how I'm getting all of my digital photographs organized, and maybe you'll find a few tips or two that will help you as well. So let's get started and dig into some digital. I first want to start by going over a few of the forms and trackers that you're going to need in order to follow along with me in this process. And hopefully, since this is POP episode 8, you have also gone through my first 7 episodes and really got a handle on how to organize your projects, your album making projects, using my POP planner. Because this really is a critical piece before we jump into digital, because my organization process really is focusing on digital organization for the scrapbooker, digital organization for anyone who wants to get a handle on how to tackle your digital images in order to create albums. And so that's what I have designed this system around, is album making. So like I said earlier, there's a lot of different ways on how to manage your digital photos, but my focus really is on album making. So you need to have a handle on that first by going through the POP planner and deciding what kind of an album maker are you. Do you want to do big moments? Do you want to do different types of theme albums? Are you a library of memories type person? Or like me, do you want to do them all and a little bit of this and a little bit of that? This has helped me get organized in the types of album making projects. And so we're going to start by jumping off from the POP Planner platform into digital. Okay, so in order to follow along with me out of your POP Planner, what I'd like you to grab are your theme scrapbooking pages, what you've written down about what type of theme albums, if that's something you're going to work on. Also, your Big Moment Scrapbooking by the year. So if you're going to do big moments, that form. And also your Library of Memories forms. I personally have 5 of these forms filled out for my Library of Memories. And so I just went ahead and pulled all 5 of these out so I can show those to you as we're going through this process. But these are the ones I'm going to reference. And so I just kind of want you to have an idea of where I'm starting from. So big moments, theme, and Library of Memories. Okay, so hopefully you've had a chance to look at that. Now again, if you are the type where you're not going to do one of those things, you can just kind of skip that part. Or if you do something a little different, then modify this so that it fits your type of album making. The next form I want you to get that's already available in the POP Planner is the tag and keyword tracker. So I want you to go ahead and pull that out. I don't know if you've had a chance to start using that yet, but go ahead and grab a tracker. And in fact, I printed several of these because I know that I'm actually going to need a few. So up to you how many you want to have, but at least get one tracker out so you can get an idea how we're going to use that. Now I have 2 brand new printables for you, and you're going to be able to find these on my website at craftsomejoy.com. And they are going to be where all my other printables are, and that's in shop and then also exclusive downloads. So if you go to my website, hit the shop button and hit exclusive downloads, you'll come to a page where you can see all of my different downloads that I have available there. So I'm going to have 2 more downloads available, and one of them is my brand new digital photo organization tips. and the other one is the digital photo organization tracker. So that's what we're going to jump into today. So you can either follow along with me as I'm going through this and then print your own, or if you want to stop the video and come back, you can do that too. So this is where we're going to jump off today, is first with the photo organization tips, digital photos. So I'm going to put this right into my pop planner right along with my photo organization tips for printed photos. So I'm just going to remind you one more time that this is just a process that I have found helpful, but as we are all different and we all have slightly different ways of organizing and looking at our project, it's up to you to find what works for you. One of the things I have learned in my many years of having digital photographs, and we actually kind of started a hybrid digital and film back in 2003. So we have a very large inventory of digital photos, and I tried a lot of different organization strategies in trying to get a handle on those photographs. So now that we have help either with Apple Photos or with other PC-based programs, and one that I'm going to talk about later on is called Historian, which is available through Forever. It's a really fabulous photo organization program which originated with Creative Memories way back, and I used that program for many years in organizing my photographs. And so that program, which used to be called Memory Manager, is now called Historian. And so that is still around and still a great way to organize your digital photos if you have a PC. So whatever format you have, whatever platform, if you're an Apple user, if you're a PC user, the very first step is that you have to get all of your media into one place. So that means all the little SD cards that you might be hoarding around your house. It means all of the flash drives if you're storing photos on flash drives. It means if you have photos in texts, if you have photos in Facebook, if you have photos in Instagram, or wherever you have your photos, you need to get all of those photos into one place. That's really key. Now, depending on what you decide, whether you want to use Photos if you have an Apple or a different kind of PC-based organizing program, the one thing that you need is a program that is going to sort your files and your pictures in chronological order. With the amount of photos that we have nowadays, you really have other better things to do than sorting your files chronologically. So you need a program that's going to do that for you. If you're using Photos, or if you're using Historian, or if you're using Google Photos, typically those programs will read the information on your photo files and sort them chronologically. So that's the first two steps. Gather everything in one place. Get all those cards out. Start loading those into your computer and get everything into one place. And then make sure that where you're putting them has the capability to organize your photos chronologically. That is so key, because this whole process is based on chronological. So then it gets into the fun part, and I hope I'm not going to lose you guys in this part because it can be a little tricky, but I'm going to just go slow and step by step. But the next thing then is that you have to create a digital organization plan for your albums. Now, this is a lot different than the way some people organize their photos who don't make albums. They want to just see photos of a certain person, or they may just kind of sort all their photos chronologically and not have another thought about it. But you and I know, because we're scrapbookers, that we really have to have a plan on how we can get to our photos for the albums that we want to make. This plan should follow what you have outlined in your pop planner. And that's why I had you pull out Big Moment, Theme, and Library of Memories, or whatever combination of that makes sense for you and what you're going to work on. So your plan is going to follow along what you've decided along the way when you are setting up your pop planner on what kind of albums you want to make. Okay, so I hope that's making sense. That's really key. And we're going to talk more about this digital organization plan because that's what this tracker is all about. But I'm going to continue first, and then we're going to come back around and talk about that. So once you have that plan set up, then is when we're going to go right back to what I've always talked about, which is your photo an A, B, or C photo? This works also for digital photographs. And you know what my favorite thing to do is look for those C photos, because then you just delete, 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 delete. Get rid of them, get them gone. I have been doing this process myself just because I want to make sure everything is making sense and everything works for me. And that is one of the funnest things to do, is just start managing your digital inventory by getting rid of photos that you know you don't need anymore. And I come across all kinds of photos of instructions on how to bake a pizza, or different boxes of shoes that we were considering purchasing, and everything. You know, we are just in the digital age where we like to take pictures of everything. So once those pictures have served their purpose, get rid of them and get really comfortable deleting. Then you're left with A photos and B photos, which are album-worthy photos and archive photos. So delete is pretty self-explanatory. So the difference between A photos and B photos, in my opinion, is that your A photos are really what you're going to spend your time working on with your digital images. Your A photos are the ones that are album worthy, and they're the ones that you're going to end up editing, and they're the ones that you're going to end up printing, and they're the ones that you are going to end up adding keywords to or tags to. Okay, so super important to pay attention to those. Now, some of your B photos might get filed and sorted along with your A photos, just because you know that that's a picture you may not want to get rid of, and that's fine. But you're not going to spend as much time on your B photos as you're going to spend on your A photos. And so your A photos, then, as I mentioned, you're going to add information to those, and then you're going to make your decision. Where am I going to put this photo? Now, this is all going to go back into your organization plan for your digital albums, and we're going to talk more about that, but at least I kind of want to go through this process. So first of all, you're going to decide, is it a big moment? Do you even do big moments? You may not. So if you don't even do big moments, you don't even have to think about that. For me, I like my chronological big moments. So I have to go back and look at my Big Moment Scrapbooking, and I have a list of all the big moments for our family. And is it one of those moments? Is it a photo that's album worthy, and is it one of those moments? So then I'm going to give that file some information. I'm going to use a keyword with that, and then I'm going to file it in the Big Moments album that I have set up by the year. Okay, so secondly, then, is it a theme album? And a theme album might be something like I have written down, which would be for my kids. My kids are a theme album all about their school albums. I have a Christmas theme album, I have a pets theme album, and I have my vacation theme albums. Those are all the main categories for my themes. So is the photo that I'm looking at, the A photo, does it fall into one of these categories? Is it a picture of one of my kids at school? Yes. Okay, so then it's going to go into the structure that I have set up for that child, and that photo is going to get the information associated with it, and then it's going to get filed. And then lastly, it's the same process if it's a library of memories type photo. So again, kind of how I think about my photos are, I'm first taking out all of my big moments and getting those filed. Then I'm taking out of all my theme photographs and getting those filed. And then I have left this wonderful photo stream of all these different miscellaneous photos. And that's when I get to categorize them. And are they things we do, places we go, people we love, or all about us? And that's going to depend on how you have filled out your forms. What's meaningful for you and what kind of photos do you take? Do you take pictures of haircuts and hair? Do you take pictures of cooking and baking? Do you take pictures of eating? Oh my goodness, I found so many pictures of food and us baking and us cooking. That's one of the things we do as a family. So I've got lots of photos of that. Think about that again, going back to the original Pop Planner trackers and making sure that you're clear on what kind of albums and what kind of memories you want to create. Okay, so I hope that's all making sense so far. Really, you need to kind of think through it, and then we're going to dig in and I'm going to show you, we're going to come back around to the digital organization plan, and let's talk a little bit more about that. Okay, so next what I want to do is spend a little bit of time talking about how to organize your digital photos. And so what I wanted to do was create a form that you could use to kind of think about your organization process before you started working on your computer and setting up your folders and your albums and your different type of organizational plan on your computer. I want you to kind of think about it and maybe get it down on paper so that it'll be really easy when you want to transfer it over to your computer. I printed out several of these digital organization trackers, and the reason I did that was because each one of these is going to kind of follow along the type of albums that I make. And so I'm going to start off with the easiest one first. So this top line, what I'm going to put here is kind of the biggest level. And for photos, this is actually going to be a folder. Big Moments is one of the large categories that I organize underneath. So I'm going to start off just by looking at Big Moments. And so on this line right here, I'm going to put down Big Moments by the year. Okay, and so for Big Moments, this is a chronological setup for my albums. So the way I have this is that I have a folder. Okay, so in the first box, I'm going to put folder, and that folder is the year. So that year is 2003. So if you were to look at my file structure, it's going to go all the way down under Big Moments. It's going to have a folder 2003, a folder 2004, a folder 2005, and so on. So under each of my year folders, though, I have also created an album, because it's really important to remember if you're working on an Apple computer and you're using the Photos program, folders cannot hold photos. Only albums can hold photos. So my folder, that's my little organizer, is going to be for 2003. And then under the folder, I have an album, and that is 2003 Big Moments. Now, the other exciting thing that you can do with the Photos program and Apple is that they have this wonderful thing called a smart album. And so I'm going to just put on my organization tracker that also for the year 2003, I'm going to have a smart album, which I'm just going to put an S with a circle around it, and album. And that smart album is going to be 2003 not filed. And so depending on what kind of a photo organization program you're using, the main thing that I want you to understand is that you want two things. You want to look at all of your photographs before you start touching any of them. And you want to have a place to hold all of those photographs for 1 year. Okay, so that's what my smart album does. If I didn't have the capability of a smart album, I would take all the photos for that 1 year in 2003 and move them into this album. Now, what is important is that even if you are not planning on making Big Moment scrapbooks by the year, I still want you to create either albums or folders filled with all of the photos for a given year. And the reason is because these are our working folders or albums. This is the place where we are going to go and select all of our photographs to get filed in all the different places as we set up our photo organization structure. And then from this album, from my album of all of my collection of photos for that year, then the first thing I want to do is start deciding what my big moments are. And that's where this tracker is going to help me. So anything that falls along any of my big moments, those are now going to get filed into my big moments album under the folder 2003. So in this process, what you want to be able to do is have this album start to get smaller and smaller as you start filing photographs. So if they are going into big moments, then this album, the total number of photos in this album is going to reduce. If some of these photos are going to go into theme scrapbooking or library of memories scrapbooking, as soon as you pull it out of that album, those numbers should go down. So what that does is that gives me an idea of every time I sit down to organize my photographs, I don't have to remember, did I file it or did I not file it? Where was I? I can't remember. It's always that I click on that album and I go, what do I have left to file? Let me see. Let me look at those photographs. And this is going to repeat year by year. So then the next folder I'm going to have is 2004. And so under 2004, I'm going to have another album that is 2004 Big Moments. And then I'm also going to have another Smart album that's 2004 Not Filed. So the trick here really, again, is just to have a place that you can go every time you want to do some digital organizing and say, where's that place? And every time I pull something out of there, that album gets smaller and you know that you have handled that digital image once and it has gone where it needs to go. Now, I also just want to remind you in this process, when you are working with these not filed albums, that is again where you are still first looking at, is it a photo that I even want to keep? Because if it's not, get rid of it. Before you even put it anywhere, you want to get rid of all the photos you don't need. And then you use your A and B categories. And if it's an A photo, you want to go ahead and add that information to your photo. Okay, and so I'm going to give you an example of exactly what I would do if I was in the year 2003, not filed into that album. And I came across a set of Valentine photos that I know are going to be part of my big moments for that year. So as I'm looking at those Valentine photos, the first question I'm going to ask myself, are there any that I want to get rid of? Are there any that I want to delete? And usually there's some photos that I do delete. And so first you want to just get rid of those. Then you're left with your A and B photos. And out of those photos, typically what I will do is just group all of those photos together and then give them some information. So most programs will allow you to kind of hold and group a lot of photos together and then tag them or give them a keyword altogether. So that's what I would do, is I would give them a keyword that is BM _ Valentines. Now that's one of the keywords that I have that I use in my digital organizing, and we're going to talk a little bit more about keywords and how to keep track of all those, but that is one of my keywords. So big moments, BM _ Valentines, because I know that's one of the things that I am going to be looking for every year. Okay, so I'm going to give those photos that information, and then it's going to go right into my big moments by the year album. So as I mentioned in this example, this is in 2003. So I'm going to take all of those photos and put them in my big moments album. Now, you might be asking, well, you just put in A photos and B photos, or are you going to scrapbook all of those photos that you move into the Big Moments album? My answer is no, but what I want to do is make sure that I take the selection of photographs out of the general album and move them into the album that I want to take a closer look at. Now again, this is my process and you may want to handle this differently, but the last thing I do when I'm ready to make my albums is I go into the album where I have gathered all of those photographs, and then I take a look at the photographs that are album worthy. And those are the ones that then I spend my time editing and printing. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. So you may end up with B photos in some of these albums, but that's okay, because once you're ready to do the next level, which is editing and printing, that's when you can take a very close look at the photos that you've collected in your albums. And you also may find that some of the photos that you put in there actually are C photos, and you may want to get rid of those. So this is a flexible, kind of a flowing process, and something that is evolving as you start looking and working with your photos. I just want you to keep that in mind too. This is one of the easiest organizational plans that you're going to set up, and it is really, really easy to do this. It's just a matter of kind of doing the same thing over all the way up until you get to the year 2020, which is where we are right now. Okay, so I'm just going to have this whole thing filled out all the way up from 2003 all the way up to 2020 for my big moments. Now, if you have worked on scanning photographs and you have even more digital images, you can continue to use this same type of process. And it's just that you're going to have to add more information to those digital images when you come across them. So if you've scanned photos that were from, say, 1997, you need to add that information to your photos so that your photo program can organize it chronologically for you. That is Big Moments by the year and how to use the photo organization tracker for Big Moments. So we're going to move along and next talk about theme albums. And again, as I have mentioned, this is going to look very different depending on what type of albums you want to make. So I'm just going to give you a couple examples from my own theme albums so that you can get an idea on how to fill out the tracker for theme albums. So at the top, as I mentioned, this is going to be your high level organization structure. And this is going to be theme albums. And for me, using photos, this will be a folder in my photos program. I'm going to have a folder that says theme albums. Then under that big theme albums folder, that's my high level organization, I'm going to have another folder. And this folder is actually for my kids because I have multiple projects that I am working on for my kids. Now this is where it's going to get a little tricky, but under my kids folder, I'm actually going to have a subfolder. So I'm just going to make a line and then write folder again. And I'm going to have a subfolder, and this folder is going to be called Ellen. As you know, she's our oldest. So if you see my file structure, the highest level is theme albums. Under theme albums, I'm going to have a folder called kids. And then under that folder, I'm going to have another folder called Ellen. And again, folders do not hold photographs. So then what I need to do is make an album. And my first album is going to be called All About Ellen. So this is where photos are actually going to reside. Now, if you remember going back to the keeping track of Ellen, what I used this form for was to give an idea of how I'm going to group different years of her life together and put those into an album. And so looking at this is going to help me decide what kind of albums Ellen is going to have. in her folder. Okay, so when I look at my theme albums, what I decided is that I'm going to have an All About Ellen album for her. I'm also going to have an Ellen School Volume 2. I've already finished her Volume 1, which is her kindergarten, first and second grade. So I'm going to have an Ellen School Volume 2, an Ellen School Volume 3, and then I'm also going to make a college and graduation album for her. So these are the different theme albums that I'm working on for Ellen, and that's what's going to translate into albums in my organization structure. Okay, so I hope you followed along. So again, the first album is going to be All About Ellen. The second album is going to be Ellen School Volume 2. And then another album is going to be Ellen School Volume 3. And then another album is going to be Ellen College and Graduation. Okay, so I hope now this is showing, because for a child you might have different things. So for my boys, I might have an album that's a Scout album, or for if you have somebody who you want to make a special sports book for, you could have an album and then put the sport. Okay, but all of these albums need to be under the folder for that child. Okay, so that really has to happen, and then you'll make another folder under the kids, and that will be your next child. So if you have more than one, and so that folder will be for me, Adam. Okay, and so on. So I'm going to follow the same thing the way I have Ellen set up. I wrote out Adam's, and I'm going to have those on this tracker. Now that's kids. There's also different types of theme albums that you may want to have a organization structure for, and that might be travel. So I do have a folder in my theme albums under my big category of theme albums. I have a folder for kids, but then I also have a folder for vacations. And then under that folder for vacations, I don't need another subfolder, but what I do need are albums. And one of the albums I have is a Grand Canyon album that is one of the next projects that I want to work on, but I also have an album of projects that I have worked on already, which would be our Baltic cruise and our Glacier and Yellowstone trip and so forth. So I have different albums for all of these big vacations that are going to have a special album just of that vacation. Okay, so that's another folder under the theme album structure. And then this is also where you would add in other theme albums. If you have pets, if you wanted to do a pets album, then again, that would be another folder. And then it would be pets. And then you could do an album that has either all your pets, or if you wanted to just do an album for a specific pet, you could do that as well. And then for me, one of the last theme albums I also have is a folder that is titled Christmas. And again, I need an album to hold my pictures of Christmas. So that's called Christmas. Okay, so do you see how that file structure works as far as kind of getting things down on paper first, getting an idea of what kind of albums you make from what you've decided on with your pot planner and what's most important, and then setting up your organizational structure on your computer to follow that. Okay, that's what really makes sense to me. So I'm hoping this is making sense to you. And I have been using this for a little while, and it is making things really easy to not only file, but then also to find. So those are the first two organizational levels that we've talked about, the big moments and the theme. Now it's going to get a little more detailed. Okay, so hang on with me. But what I want to show you is just how you can take this organizational structure and apply it to the library of memories. So this is going to be very different depending on how you take photos. So we've organized, we've taken all of our big moment photos out, and we've taken theme photos out, and now we've got this wonderful leftover group of photos that we can do something fun with. And that's what is so exciting for me about the Library of Memories, is that this is the story of our life. These are all the good things that we take pictures of that I want to tell a story about. That's Library of Memories. And if you remember, Library of Memories is things, places, people, and us. And so we do have trackers for all those different categories that I've supplied in the POP Planner. And I hope you've taken a chance to kind of write down what kind of photos you take. So these trackers, again, are filled out based on when you're scrolling through your digital photos or you're looking at your printed photos, what kind of themes are popping out for you. And jot those down. One thing I have realized, though, is that as I'm going through and as I'm organizing my photographs, different things will pop out that I'm dealing with and that I'm touching. And so I'm writing down keywords of what those things are. And this is a list that I think I'm going to have in my Library of Memories album. It may come down to when I'm going through my photos that instead of cooking and baking and eating and food, that instead I'm just going to have one category, which is things we do and food. And in that, we're going to have cooking, baking, eating, and food all in that category. So what I'm saying is that this really is an evolutionary process, and give yourself some flexibility and give yourself freedom as you're going through this. Write in pencil so that you can erase and make changes and do what works for you in this whole process. So in order to use this tracker, what we're going to do is start at the largest organizational category, which is Library of Memories. And again, for me, this is a folder. This is a large level, high level organizational folder. And then under Library of Memories, I am going to have another folder. And this folder is going to be called Things We Do. Now, here's where it gets kind of important to really understand keywords and how you're going to tag and add keywords to your digital images. And so in the Photos program, you have the ability to create a whole list of keywords. The Photos program uses keywords, not necessarily tags. Other programs I know use tags, but the keywords are what you can come up with. They're entirely based on what you decide. So for me, 4 of the key tags that I made were for the Library of Memories type of albums. So they are things we do, places we go, people we love, and all about us. Those are some of the main keyword tags that I have. So the other thing about keywords and tags is that you can always add more than one to a digital image. So you could add as many that make sense for organizing or for categorizing that image. So what I wanted to make sure is that for that high level organization, for the high level folder of this album, this whole album that's going to be all the things we do as a family, that whatever photo I wanted to end up in this album is going to have that keyword associated with it. Now, there are other keywords that are going to be associated with the same image, but they are going to have a things we do keyword, and then they also might have another keyword, which is things we do, or TWD underscore cars, or TWD underscore food. So that's a little tricky, but I think the more you kind of get into organizing your photos and understanding keywords and how to add information to your digital images, the more it will make sense. So my library of memories, again, is that big organizational structure. Under that, I'm going to have a folder, which is things we do. And under things we do, I'm going to have an album, which is going to hold my photos. This album is not correlating with what my physical album is going to be for Library of Memories. This album is just a holding place for the album, which is actually in my organizational structure, a folder. Okay, so I know that's a little tricky there, but it's important to make that distinction. So the folder is things we do, but really in physical form, things we do is going to be my album, my photo album. Digitally, things we do is a folder, and under that folder, I'm going to have an album. So the album that's going to hold the photos for what I'm going to put in the things we do album, my first album is going to be called Everyday Life. And if you remember, Everyday Life is also going to be a title page in the Things We Do album. And all the different activities and the pictures that I find that are just kind of moments of everyday life are what are going to go into the Everyday Life album. So my photo structure is going to have an album that's called Everyday Life. Now here's where it gets kind of interesting, because you don't necessarily want 15 different types of albums for all these different types of activities that are part of your everyday life. So instead, all of these different types of activities are all going to go into the album called Everyday Life, but it is going to be absolutely critical that before you move them into Everyday Life, that they have a keyword assigned to them. So that's a little bit about Everyday Life. And if you remember, this folder, the Things We Do, has also other categories within it. And what those are seasons, colors, sports and rec, traditions, accomplishments, whatever works, again, whatever works for you. And just as I took out Everyday Life and made that an album because I have all these different categories that I want to put in Everyday Life, I'm going to do the same thing for these other categories of things we do. So I'm going to make another album that is going to be seasons. And then within that, if there are specific photos that represent the seasons, they are going to be filed in this album, and they are going to have this keyword associated with it. And then on down for the different types of categories that you want to see in the Things We Do album in your library of memories. Okay, so I'm not going to go ahead and fill everything out, but you kind of get the idea there. So just as we were doing this for Things We Do, the same thing is going to be done for Places We Go, People We Love, and All About Us. So again, we're going to have a high-level folder that again is going to be, this is another album in my library of memories. This folder is going to be called Places We Go. And then under Places We Go, I'm going to have different albums, and the album is going to be Home. And then it's going to be another album and it's going to be around town. And then I'm going to have another album that are all those fun little short trips of places that we travel to. So again, these are albums. They're going to hold those photos, but all of these photos are going to end up in the places we go physical album. And also in my setup, what I want to do is have these albums as separate title pages. So I'm going to have a title page called a place called home, and then all of the pictures that are in this album will go behind that title page. So then what you would do in order to continue on your library of memories is go ahead and go through the rest of your trackers and go through places we go, people we love, and all about us. And again, keep deciding what's going to be a folder, which is a high level album, physical album, and then also how you're going to hold your pictures in different albums and what those are going to be called. And then all of these things that you're keeping track of and that you're thinking about ahead of time, now all of this is going to get transferred to the computer. And it's going to be so easy to set this up one time and know exactly how to start organizing your photos. So that's what's really been exciting, is once I kind of thought through this process and once I was able to decide how I wanted my digital organizational plan, my digital organizational structure to look, then the filing just becomes icing on the cake. It is so easy to file photos once you've done the work of deciding where it's going to go. One time you decide. That way you don't keep thinking, where was I going to put this photo? Or I can't remember, did I put it in this folder or in that folder or whatever. Now everything ties into how you make albums, and everything is kind of written down and thought out. And so this process is allowing me to take that huge task and break it down into manageable pieces. Okay, so just to review, really the first thing that you need to do is set up an album structure of photos by the year that are not filed. And then just work away at filing all of those pictures until you have 1 year done, and then the next year done, and then the next year. And pretty soon your whole digital library will be organized. So one strategy I could suggest also to you is to, once you have all of your years set up, is to start with the most recent photographs and then work your way backwards. Sometimes you'll be able to handle the more recent photographs easier because they're all fresh in your mind, and you'll know specifically exactly where to put those photos and how to get them filed. And then as you go back in time, you may need some help in identifying or trying to figure out where some of those photos go. But just make sure that you take this into small increments that you can manage. That's really, really important. So before we wrap up today, I do want to come back, as promised, to the tag and keyword tracker. And this is one of the original trackers that was available with the Pop Planner. And I just kind of want to take a minute and show you how I have been starting to fill out my tracker. And again, I printed several of these because as I'm going through and creating keywords, this is where I'm going to write all of those keywords down. So especially as you saw in my library of memories, how I have different keywords that I am thinking about. So as I actually physically make those keywords on the computer, that is when I put it down on my tracker, so that I have one place that I can remember this is my whole set of keywords. And that will also help you not duplicate keywords that are very similar. One thing I have learned in the process of going through and organizing my photographs and assigning keywords is that I had kind of a collection of miscellaneous old keywords that I really didn't want to continue using. And so I decided to start fresh and make sure that all of my keywords followed along this similar structure, that these were all associated with things that I had thought about and how I wanted to find my photographs. So instead of a miscellaneous photograph having a keyword assigned to it like donuts, instead what I've done is gone through the process and really thought about what a significant keyword is for me and my album making projects. And instead, that same photograph would be labeled with TWD, or things we do _food. That is going to be a more general category. So if I know I am looking for pictures of donuts, it's going to be in this food category. And there's not going to be so many photos in that category that I'm not going to be able to find donuts. So again, my advice is that keywords, you don't want to have a million keywords, because it's just going to make you a little more frustrated in trying to remember all of those different things that you've been labeling your photographs. Instead, really take the time to think about what makes sense for you and to create a keyword that is going to make sense in how you make albums and how you want to find your photos. So as we wrap up today, there is one other thing I would like to mention, and that is also that in the process of assigning information to your photos, anything that is a recent photo most likely will have certain information associated with it. In other words, my program, I know, can do face recognition, it does date recognition, and it also does location recognition, because we have geotagging for our photos now. So any of my recent photographs, that would be information that I would not necessarily need to add to my digital image, because it already is going to know who is in the image because of face recognition. It's going to know when the date was taken, when the picture was taken, because it has the date. And then it also is going to know where. So I'm not going to want to say, oh, this was taken in Laguna Beach, because my program is already going to know that that photo was taken in Laguna Beach. So when you're adding information, I just kind of want to leave you with that, is also think about what your computer already knows about your photographs. And you don't want to just kind of add that, because that's just going to add to how much time it takes you in this whole process. And we really want to get through it. In the same point, if you have an older photo that was taken in Laguna Beach that doesn't have geotagging associated with it, you can always add that information. And that is something that you would want to add to that digital image. So that's a little bit about how I have been tackling my digital photos and how I have been working on organizing my digital backlog. And so I hope you found some information in this process that could be helpful for you. And as always, I'd love to hear your comments. Make sure you leave those for me. And I'm going to have some links and information in the description box. So make sure you hit the little arrow down to find that information. And so next steps, what I plan on doing is putting together a couple more videos that can get into the Photos app for Apple computers in a little more detail, and show you exactly how I have gone about setting up my files and how I use smart albums and a lot of the different tricks that I have found in using the Apple's Photos program. And then I'm also planning on making some videos on how to use Historian in much the same way. So again, I'd love to hear if that is something you would be interested in. Make sure you leave that comment for me. And my best wishes go out to all of you in this very, very unusual time. And so hopefully this process of getting some of your digital images organized will help you. This is a wonderful time to just stay home, be with your family, enjoy your time together, and maybe do some digital organization. So until next time, take care, and we'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now.